And we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, we are live. Welcome back once again to another live stream discussion on Leslie Chambers Kaiju Reviews. It's been a minute since we've done this. I think the last time we did something like this was at Kaiju Con Line, that awesome, show that one of my co-hosts put together. Kyle Yount. It's the last time we got together, but here we are.
Yeah,
We're doing a deep dive discussion. We're doing a deep dive discussion into my most favorite Godzilla film of all time, 1964's Mothra versus Godzilla, aka Godzilla versus the Thing. Yes. Oh my God. Yes. Oh my God. This movie is amazing. Yes, it is. So let me do my Steve Harvey and introduce my fellow co-hosts. Of course, all the way up there in Portland, my fearless leader on Collect All Monsters, the Kaiju Cast controller, the one and the only Kyle Yount. How you doing, sir?
Dude, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on here for this. I'm excited
No
to talk
problem.
about the moth versus the lizard.
Absolutely. And of course, my other great friend and co-host on Collect All Monsters, all the way up in Seattle, Washington. And I know this film is kind of a favorite of his. More on that later. The one and the only artist extraordinaire, David Dopko. What's up, David?
Hey, Leslie. As Kyle said, thank you so much for including me in this. Like, I would not take no for an answer because I basically told you I'm going to be on it regardless. So this is probably my favorite Godzilla film of all time, and more about that later. But yeah, it's a pleasure to be here, and I can't wait to dive deep.
And my other great friend, he's a collaborator with me on my YouTube shows on the regular. Of course, I'm talking about William Fett from the awesome, great YouTube show, The Godzilla Files. Welcome into this deep dive of Mothra versus Godzilla, because I know the film is kind of up there with you. So welcome to the show, William. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm trying to think of something original to say, but I'm probably going to echo everybody that's going to say this. I'm excited to talk about this one. This is definitely a top 2 film for me. I think a whole entire Godzilla series.
Excellent.
And of course, last and certainly but not least, you know him, you love him, you see him almost every Sunday night, having the best Kaiju collectible auction YouTube show ever in the existence of mankind from Kaiju Live. I'm talking about the one, the only, not Vince Russo, but Aj Russo. What's going on, Aj?
What's going on, everybody? Thanks so much for having me. I don't know if there's anything I can say that can just top what you just said. So happy to be here, man. This is great. Godzilla vs. Mothra, probably my favorite movie, my favorite suit, hands down. So I'm excited.
Excuse me, it's Mothra versus Godzilla, sir.
Nah.
Excuse me.
It was Godzilla
Let's
versus
get it
Thing
right.
first. Godzilla versus Thing first.
That's right.
Quick story.
You just do your thing.
It's an eggshell.
Quick story. The first time I had AJ on the show, it's customary when I have new people on the show, I always ask them, what's their favorite Godzilla film? What's their first Godzilla film? So I asked AJ, he's laughing because you know where I'm going with this. I asked AJ, I was like, so what's your favorite Godzilla film? And he said, Godzilla versus Mothra. I did not know he was talking about 64. I was so close of dropping his behind. You had no idea. I was like, wait a minute. Which one you talking about, 92 or 64? He was like, oh, 64. I was like, oh, my God. Could my heart drop into my stomach? No offense to anybody who loves 1992, but
Big but.
But seriously, thank you all, Kyle, AJ, David, William, for being here. And we're talking about this film, this awesome film. I want to give a huge shout out to everybody that's in the chat right now. We got 18 people watching this. Hopefully that will grow. But Tim Alton, Gojira 851, what's up, man? Paul Costa, Nathan Lindsay, John Parkinson, Over 9K, Liam Foley, Alex Sawyer, Kent Eatonfield, Jonathan Portman, Helmi Abda. Is that the guy from Australia?
Yep. Tell me.
Yes. Kyle Yount. Well,
You know,
Man,
I
that
have
dude.
devices. I can be in the chat room too.
like that dude. Come on now. Come on, that dude.
He's gonna
I
stir
love him.
some trouble, I can tell you.
Man, tell me about it. Tell me about it. Robert Dwyer, hey, how you doing? Eric Stokes, show with Go G75. Ryan Mitchell, Kaiju
Ryan.
Kid Extraordinaire. What's up? Thank you all for being here. We're talking about the greatness that is Mothra versus Godzilla. We're talking about, you know, our thoughts on our first exposure to the film, our thoughts on Mothra, her role in the film, Godzilla's role, the controversial ending, our favorite collectibles pertaining to the movie. And this is basically like the first time I'm doing this, because normally when I do these shows talking about the movies, I cover like a specific era where it's the 70s, Heisei, Monsterverse, and during those shows we don't really have time to go into every individual film into a deep dive discussion like this. So that's the purpose of me doing this. So I plan on trying doing this with every Godzilla film. So, and of course, the hosts were like interchanged. Like, you know, when I have Monster Zero, when I do Monster Zero, you know, you're gonna see Kyle, you're gonna see David. When I do Terra Mecha Godzilla, hopefully I can get Godzilla fan freeze Everett Gronin up here. Godzilla vs. Guy again, you're gonna see William, you're gonna see Samson West, hopefully, Mecha Godzilla 74, Dale Champagne Martinez, Godzilla 2000. I'm gonna have AJ up here.
Oh man, yeah. If you just want someone to crap all over that movie for the entire 2 hours, I'm your guy.
I said that on purpose.
Wait, Terror?
No, Godzilla 2000. No.
Oh, okay.
No,
Godzilla versus Mothra. AJ's your guy. Definitely AJ's your guy. For sure.
So once again, when I start doing these films, you know, Destroyer, Gojira 851, like, you know, I have a pretty good handle on like my friends in the community, what their favorite film is, or at least one of their favorites. And so you're going to see these people up here, these great friends of mine, talk about, you know, what they love about our favorite monster films. And during a time where the government is telling people more so to stay indoors now, what's going on, I feel like it's best, you know, that we can come out here and give out some great discussions and content, like what Kyle did with John Ruffin last week. That was an awesome discussion. What we do on Collect All Monsters every month is awesome. What AJ does every Sunday or every other Sunday is awesome. What myself, William, Phil the Kaiju King, Gojira 851, Butezilla, AJ, what we do, you know, we're just doing what we can to just make things a little bit better while everybody's going through this really rough time. So without further ado, let's talk about Mothra versus Godzilla and how we're going to do it. Basically, we're going to go in like in order. I'm going to be last. So Kyle, you can go first, then David, then William, then AJ. So basically, the first question is this, and people in the chat, if you hear the question, you're more than welcome to type your answer in the chat and get conversations started amongst yourselves. So basically, what was your first exposure to Mothra versus Godzilla? When was the first time you saw this film? Because I know your first film was Rodan. And I know your first Godzilla film technically was 1985, if I'm not mistaken, Kyle. So when did you?
Correct, yes.
So when did you get first exposed to Mothra versus Godzilla?
So funny story, because I discovered Godzilla as a teenager when I sort of made my way back to the United States from living in Japan. I was like, oh, I need to see more of these movies, and I went to your local video stores like Suncoast and those types of shops, and I bought every single Godzilla VHS tape they had, and Mothra versus Godzilla, or Godzilla versus the Thing, was definitely in that batch of videotapes that I purchased probably as a late teenager, probably somewhere in like my sophomore year of high school, I would guess. Yeah.
Wow. Cool.
Now I know before we get to David, now I know that Monster Zero and GMK is like your favorite, as far as like your favorite Godzilla film. I know they kind of interchange. I guess it depends on what day it is. Yeah. Where does Mothra versus Godzilla rank in your top 10 or top 5? Is it in your top 5? Is it in your top 10? Or
I think Mothra versus Godzilla is probably in my top 5. If it's not in the top 5, it's just outside of it. I mean, definitely in the top 10. There's a lot of really great stuff going on in this movie. I'm sure, talk oodles about it later. But yeah, I'm a huge fan of the film, and I think it's really well done. And even though the sort of initial reaction from early Godzilla fans is often like, how can Godzilla get beaten by a moth? Like, There's so much more to this movie, and so much more going on in the film that it's definitely become one of my favorites over the years.
And we're definitely going to go there, involving the ending of this film. Trust me, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go there. We're not going to shy away from it. We're not going to just, pretend like it doesn't exist. Certain election results. That's another story. But we're gonna talk about it. We're gonna dive into it. So let's go with the next guy, the next host, David Eric Dopko. I know this is your favorite Godzilla film of all time, which says a lot because you have other great Godzilla films out there in the franchise: Monster Zero, Biollante, Destroyer, GMK, Shin Godzilla. Of course, what was your first exposure to Mothra vs. Godzilla, and what sets this film apart that it is your favorite amongst the rest of them?
That's a great question. So, unlike Kyle, I discovered this when I was pretty young. I think I was in elementary school, and my very first exposure to Godzilla, I think you guys all know, was Monster Zero, and I was just hooked from that moment on. And I think the next one was King Kong versus Godzilla that I also saw at night. I was allowed to stay up late to watch it. But we had a thing on the East Coast, and you old timer East Coasters will definitely remember the 4:30 movie. It was this movie series that every week they would have feature a different type of a film. So, for example, they'd have like Planet of the Apes week, they'd have Hammer Horror week, they'd have Universal Horror week. And one week in the 70s, I stumbled across Godzilla week. And Mothra versus Godzilla was probably the first one that they showed, like on a Monday. And I was absolutely hooked. I loved the movie. I've grown to love it even more, but from my first viewing, I absolutely was enamored by Godzilla and the way he looked in this movie, and just everything about it. And it's one of those films that I know we'll talk about a little bit later in more detail, but everything just comes together in this movie. The music, the acting, the story, the special effects, and we'll talk about that more later, but it's one of those things where everything comes together and makes a nearly perfect film for me. And although definitely it changes which movies are in my top 5, but one thing is for certain: this is always number 1 for me.
Would you call it the Goldfinger of the Godzilla franchise?
Yeah. I would call it the Goldfinger or the Empire Strikes Back. That's another sort of reference that you could do, or it is definitely one of those ones where everyone involved in it was at the top of their games. And it's from a time period that experts call the golden era of tokusatsu filmmaking in Japan. So again,
golden era of Japanese cinema altogether. Really,
Japanese cinema. Yeah, let's take it even further than that. But absolutely, it's the gold standard for that I judge every other movie on, because the human cast is just as engaging as the monster cast. There's a few things that aren't quite perfect, and we will dive into that a little bit too. But very, very few things that maybe shouldn't be in there, or that I think could have been a little bit better. But overall, it's fantastic. I absolutely love it, and I watch it probably more than any other Godzilla movie. I watch it. Another reason I like it because Keith likes it too, and because he's a big Mothra fan, and he will actually watch most of the movie with me. So that's another plus that I have going for it. So it's not one that I have to watch by myself, like Frankenstein and the Gargantuas. He just leaves the house when they put those on. He's like, he hates those. Anyway, that's my initial thoughts on it. So yeah.
Okay, William. Thank you, David. Okay, William, what about you? What was your first exposure to this film?
So I would have to say my first exposure would have to be when I was really just young, when I was younger. So I used to live in Astoria, Queens, and there was a Blockbuster on Steinway, and there's a bunch of different shops on there. So we would go pretty much every week, to pick up movies from Blockbuster, everything. And they had a pretty good sci-fi section, and in there they had a lot of Godzilla films. So my go-to Godzilla film was always Godzilla versus Gigan. I didn't own that on VHS, but it came to I was always renting it, so my dad probably should have just bought it for me because the amount of money that he spent on me renting this one movie over and over again would probably equal out to it. But I do remember picking it up, and I do remember the reason why is because my mom actually really liked this. And my mom traveled abroad for most of her life when she was younger and stayed in the Philippines, stayed in Japan, all these different areas. And this just happened to be one of the films that she always really liked. I think she always really liked Mothra to begin with. And funny enough, the movie, when I first saw it, I actually didn't really like it. I wasn't impressed by it. And you got to remember, at home, what I had just on hand was King Kong versus Godzilla, Godzilla versus Biollante, Godzilla versus the Sea Monster, and there was one other Godzilla movie from the Heisei period that I had on hand. So they were all really much more action-packed and faster paced. And this movie, I couldn't get into it when I first originally saw it. Now going back and seeing it, it's, like I said, it's my top 2 films of all time in the Godzilla franchise. It's just amazing on every level. It's also the only Godzilla film that I will keep on my phone music-wise at all times. It never leaves my phone. It's always on there. It's because just every theme, everything is just so good on it.
Agreed. Hey, Leslie,
Awesome.
real quick. I got to tell you, when I saw this was in the early 70s. There was no such thing as VHS, no video players. I had to wait till it came on again, eventually, or not eventually. So I used to, like John Ruffin and I would do the same thing. We would tape it on my father's tape recorder so I can at least listen to the music and hear the story again. But you guys had it good, man. I had to wait, and then you wonder, did I really just see that? Because sometimes it takes months to a year for that film to be shown again. And when VHS started to come around, I was already in high school, and I stopped really getting into these movies like I did when I was younger. So I just ignored it, all the Blockbuster and Suncoast stuff, until the late 80s. But dude, man, no VHS, no video, nothing. I had to wait till it came back on. So just got to put that out there. I walked uphill to school with no
Sorry,
shoes,
Grandpa.
both ways.
Both ways.
Yeah.
In the snow, to see a Godzilla film.
Anyhow, sorry, I just had to throw that in there because I'm living in the dark ages over
I
here.
totally get that because my dad recorded a lot of my Godzilla films on HBO.
Ah, okay, cool.
So I had a lot of VHS tapes. They weren't official. They would have Godzilla versus Biollante, Godzilla meets Bambi, and then some Disney, another Disney film for my sister. So all along there, that's all on one VHS tape.
Dude, I had no VHS tapes.
Oh, I can't imagine.
Zero.
I got a whole box of them somewhere. somewhere.
Well, AJ, go ahead and tell us what was your first exposure to this film, and why is it your favorite?
Well, similar to like what William was saying, we had a Blockbuster, and Godzilla vs. Smog Monster was my one that my dad should have just bought because I don't know, they just had that one on loop all the time. But I remember they actually had, I believe they had the Godzilla vs. the Thing cover. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, that thing looks awesome. Let's watch that. And then, it wasn't that. I was like, this doesn't make any sense. Why is the poster art like this? But there's a moth. I don't get it. But I don't know. I just fell in love with the movie. The Godzilla, just the way he looks, that's probably the most I drew. Every Godzilla I ever drew always was him. Every now and then I dabble in some other ones, but whatever I can get, if it was G-Fan or whatever that he was in, I would trace it, always trying to draw it. And then someone's calling me. Goodbye. Sorry.
Goodbye.
And the movie was just, to me, I just always loved how it was so animalistic where, it was just Godzilla sees an egg. He's hungry. He wants the egg. And that's it. Like, that's basically his entire motivation. That entire movie is like, I'm hungry, I need that. And then
Brought
you have
to you by the Egg Council of Japan.
and then, that's, as a young kid, that's all I saw. I just loved Godzilla. I loved that he just wanted to eat Mothra's eggs. But then, seeing it when you're older and really cementing it as just, one of the best kaiju movies is just the human plot of just how humans are just the worst and everything's to be sold for a profit. It doesn't matter if it's even going to help you. It's like, nah, we'll sell the egg. Who cares? Godzilla's not coming. Don't worry about it. Like, so just, tying all that into it, it's just such an amazing movie. And Furry Mothra is the best, aside from Tokyo SOS, which is essentially a revamped version of 64. So yeah, that was started at a young age, and I just always go back to that movie. Just love, even the villains are like, they're comical, but also like they're just hilarious. Like the guy with his, like, I don't know, kind of Hitler mustache. It's hilarious.
You mean Kubiyama, the great entrepreneur?
Yes. And the guy just swallowing eggs. Like, you just have all these like just great cast of characters. Yeah, it's just so good.
Great.
My first exposure to this film, of course, everybody knows my first film was Megalon. And after seeing Megalon, that's what really got me as a fan. Traditionally, you would hear that mostly Godzilla fans were mostly dinosaur fans, and that was kind of their gateway to Godzilla. I was never really a dinosaur fan. I'm an 80s baby, right? So I grew up in the era of G.I. Joe, Transformers, and the Super Friends, and all these larger-than-life superheroes. And so when I saw the superhero Godzilla and Megalon, that got me hooked. And then I started looking at other Godzilla films at the time, or what I had access to: Sea Monster, Monster Zero, the original 54 with Raymond Burr, 84, Gigan, or whatever. And my access to Godzilla films was the TBS Superstation. All my WCW fans out there gonna feel me on that, because that was mainly what the Superstation was known for. WCW wrestling, when wrestling was good and not the crap that it is now. And basically Saturday afternoons with Super Scary Saturday with Grandpa Monster for the Monsters, and he would showcase Godzilla films every now and then. That was my gateway. And they were showing, like I said, I saw a few Godzilla films under my belt at that point, and this was, more towards when I was going into high school. I was like a mid-teenager, and they show a TV spot of this film. At the time, it was called Godzilla vs. Mothra. This was before the 92 film came out, right? So I saw it. I was like, and normally when a Godzilla movie is coming, I know it's coming, I make plans to be there because I'm sitting there watching it, whatever. But when they show the TV spot, they actually show clips of the brief fight between Mothra and Godzilla from Sea Monster. And I was like, I thought it was, at this point, I saw Godzilla's Revenge, right? So I thought this movie was going to be like another clip show. So I was like, I'm still going to watch this, but I don't think it's going to be important for me to sit there and watch it live. I'll just tape it and then I'll watch later on. And I ended up watching it later on. And this was back then when we had VHS tapes, not DVDs and Blu-rays, whatever. You had to press the button and wait like 14 years for it to rewind and stuff like that. And of course, when you press play, you don't know what part of the tape is going to stop on. And it stopped at the point where Godzilla is attacking Nagoya. And I'm like, okay, that's a different looking Godzilla. Never seen that one before. I never seen this movie before. So after watching it from beginning to end, it just captivated me from day one. And ever since then, every single Godzilla film that I watched after this point, even though I enjoy them, this one has not budged from its top spot. I love the score. I love the human characters. And that's another thing. When people tend to say these Godzilla films have crappy human stories, let me tell you, Mothra vs. Godzilla, Monster Zero, Destroyer, GMK, there are some great human stories in these films. Like, of course, I get it. The main event are the monsters, but there are a great majority of these films that have a great human story that leads up to the monster action, and Mothra vs. Godzilla is definitely one of them. And I just love this movie. I mean, y'all know that. I talk about it all the time. And I just it's the one movie that I can't get enough of. It's kind of funny and ironic that my favorite one does involve one where he loses, but at the end of the day, it's still a great movie. Which segue into my next question. I want to ask my great co-host here. Who is your favorite character from the film? Your favorite human character from the film? It could be anybody. Kumayama, Torahata, the Peanuts, the scientist, the photographer who wants to take pictures of garbage everywhere, whatever. But who is your favorite? Who is your favorite character from this film and why?
Oh,
go Kyle.
Okay,
that's a
I'm
tough
going. I'm going. And yeah, I'm gonna do that thing where I spitball so that I can think up the answer. Leslie, what a great question, boy! Let me tell you. Now, the reason I think AJ brought this up, the reason that this is such a difficult choice is because there are so many good characters in this. As much as I want to say Akira Takarada, who is at his peak in this film, if you watch it, that's peak Takarada. The GIF Takarada is very disappointed or whatever that is from this movie. Anyway, I want to say Takarada. But honestly, I think my favorite character is Yoshibumi Tajima's the great Kumayama, the great entrepreneur. Like everything about his character, I have found new respect for. As you know, not that he's a respectful character, but the acting and the actual development of that character, I have found just to be a fascinating. Learn, and as I've continued to watch this movie over and over again. I should actually mention that as far as movies that I will put on over and over and over again, Mothra versus Godzilla is absolutely, it would be in the top 5 of movies that I would just go, I want to put a Godzilla movie on in the background. That's one. And it'll just go on the screen. But yeah, Kumiyama is amazing, that movie. And if I could just pinpoint it a little bit, I just watched the Japanese version of the film for the first time ever today. And as, you know, as shady as he comes across in the American English dub, I think he's worse as a person in the Japanese one. Like when he blows the smoke at Junko's camera, and then the American one, he says, "That picture ought to be excellent, huh?" He's just kind of a jerk. But what he says in the Japanese one is like, "If it's good, send me a copy." Like, what a dick. And then when he goes on later on, when the Mothra twins are shown to be in leagues with the reporter and the scientist when they go to Happy Enterprises to try and, you know, plead their case to Kumiyama and Torahata, the exchange between them that sort of happens, it's on camera, but you can't hear it. Like Kenji Sahara is whispering like this. And then when Kumiyama comes away from that, he's like, all of a sudden, he was bravado before, and he's a little quieter. He's like, "Hey, how about you sell me these ladies?" And I was just like, "Oh, gross." I'm skeezed out now by this character. So it was just really, I love the ability to go back and watch literally like a secondary version of these performances like later on. It's like a big positive of being able to go back and like the Criterion set having the Japanese versions of these on them.
Absolutely.
What about you, David?
Oh man, I was going to say Kumiyama too, for the exact same reasons that you said. I mean, I just think the whole cast, as you mentioned before, just works perfectly together. There's just the right amount of humor to sort of like steer away from the actual horrible things that are happening in this film. There are a lot of people who are dying in this movie, and Godzilla is destroying Japan. And so I'm not going to go with your same one, even though I love him. I'm going to probably go with Junko, Yuriko Hoshi, because her character sort of has a character arc throughout the film. She starts off as sort of a comedy relief. You know, she can't focus on the object that she's trying to get a picture of that looks beautiful among the wreckage. And, you know, we'll talk about what that piece is a little bit later, I'm so sure. And she sort of evolves into an integral part of the film when they're on Infant Island, and the natives initially say, absolutely not, we will not help you. You played with the fire of the gods and this is your punishment. She gives that really heartfelt speech that sort of changes the minds of not only the natives but the fairies too. The Imi and Yumi Ito, who were great characters as well. I think that is enough to make her a really important character in this film, and I really like her in it. And it's tough because they're all good. I mean, I love you Fujiki eating the eggs. I mean, it's just a perfect amount of comedy in there. Jun Tazaki as like the gruff, newspaper editor. It's a different role for him. Usually he plays a military guy or like a general or something like that. But again, like Akira Takarada is fantastic. So is Hiroshi Koizumi. But I got to go with Miss Junko because she does so much for the empathy side of the story. So how about you, Mr. William?
Well, I'm gonna say it's actually really tough because I agree with everybody. I think every character in this film plays an amazing part. Everyone is like so important to maybe not important, but every time they're on screen, it's great. And this is the thing that I kind of go back to when people talk about, Godzilla films are just action, set pieces. Human characters don't matter. And I heard that a lot when I was talking about Godzilla King of the Monsters in the last film. But there's a way to balance it out. The reason why you care about what Godzilla is doing is because of the human characters. You have that connection with them. So when they're in danger, you're worried about them. When they finally get their comeuppance, you're very happy about it. I mean, I think my two favorite characters have to be the two main human villains. I think, one, they play off each other perfectly. I think their chemistry is great. And, but you can also say that the reporters, all of them are, just as good. And the scientists, there's so many to choose from, but I think I would go with the two human villains in this, just because I think they have the most to do in the film. So they get to have the bigger personalities. They get to have those really memorable moments because even as crazy it is, they're making an amusement park for an egg. That's it. When you think about it, that's their whole plan about it. Or when they see the twins, they automatically think they're spies for another corporation. It's what? Their logic goes off so quickly, and it's great. I would love to be in a boardroom meeting with both of them just to see what it's like. So that's just me, but every character is really good, well written. They all have their own personal stories, which I think is something that all Godzilla movies should have through them. But that's me though. How about you? Right?
Villains are great, man. Just fantastic.
I'm gonna go with the Eggman. I mean, come on. It's for me as a kid, the characters that always yeah, it's like a Sonic thing. But as a kid, that always stuck out to me because it was just ridiculous. It was almost like the guy in Guy Game with the corn. It's just that character is amazing because why not? He's holding up people with an egg of corn. I mean, ear of corn. Get it? Egg of corn. Yeah. But yeah, no, that character was just so much fun to me. And then everything he does is almost kind of there's a couple times where he's does an egg joke and then it segues into the Mothra egg, and I just always love that kind of stupid stuff.
Totally.
So yeah, just that character. I mean, again, it's all the characters are great, and I could, like everybody else, just pick somebody else. But yeah, for me as a kid, that was the one that always stood out to me because it was just so absurd that this guy just loved eggs so much that he brought them around with him everywhere. Just a guy was like, "Oh, I got some eggs. Anyone want any?" It's just what? Who does that? Has anyone ever run into a person like that? It's great.
It was brilliant. If you like eggs so much, cover the monster egg.
Yeah.
So good. Leslie, actually, are you choosing Takarada? Because I feel like I need to talk about him a little bit. I need to talk about Takarada's character. If you're not going to talk about him,
No. Well, the floor is yours. Go for it.
all right. So I mentioned that this is peak Takarada, right? And so if you look at his career, he started in '54, right? That was his first role, and then 10 years later, here he is in Mothra versus Godzilla. Also, this is the first time since 1955 that he has worked with Ishiro Honda on a special effects picture. All in between that time, he's been making romance films, comedy films, leading man stuff, right? So Takarada at this point is really worth watching, in my opinion. Like, as a character, to see his mannerisms, to see what he does to establish his character. And if, like I said, I was watching the Japanese version, so I was really, really absorbing, I think, everything that he was throwing into that. And there's this scene, right at the beginning where Yuriko Hoshi is trying to, they get there, and he's immediately like, "Look, I'm the boss. Get to work. Go take the photos. It's not art. Just go." And he's trying to be real brash. But there's this interplay relationship between the two where they are actually a little more close, I think, in age and maybe in social status, but he's still like the boss. And so when they're working, he's supposed to be in charge. But when they're not working, she calls him Ich-chan, which is like a familiar sort of way to refer to people. Chan, asking, Chan and Kun is a way to, address your familiar friends and brothers and sisters and stuff like that. So their relationship, like sort of like on and off screen, but really on and off job, is really nice in the film.
It's true.
And that scene with where they're in the hotel, Yuriko Hoshi and Takarada and
Hiroshi
Koizumi, they're all in the hotel and they're sort of talking about the problem that they're having. And Takarada's drinking. He's having a drink and he's loosened up a bit. You can see his, my beard's in the way, but he's loosened up his tie a little bit. His jacket's a little loose, and this is where like Yuriko Hoshi's starting to call him Ich-chan, and he totally stumbles a little bit. Like he's got his alcohol on. It's just such a subtle job that he does in that one scene, and there's so many more nuances throughout the rest of the movie. But I mean, especially since myself, David, and William talked a lot about the bad guys, I felt like I needed to give Takarada a little bit of a boost there, because man, what an incredible actor just in general.
Of course. Hey, Leslie, real quick, can I just talk a little bit about the villains one more time? Just 2 seconds.
Go for it.
So William definitely is correct. The interplay between Torahata and Kumiyama is perfect. I actually think Torahata is a lot worse than Kumiyama. He is like Emperor Palpatine. He's behind the scenes with strings. Yeah. And, it's especially apparent when Kumiyama calls him in a panic saying, "Hey, the villagers need their money." And he's on the other line, distracted. There's like, I think it's actually a geisha, like feeding him,
drinks,
whiskey.
Yeah.
And he's just like, could give a blank about it. He's just like, yeah, whatever. Yeah, trust me, and he's just a bad guy. He is the one that is pulling all the strings, and he definitely gets his comeuppance in the film, and they actually both get exactly what they deserve. A little bit more graphic in the Japanese version than the US version, but definitely the villains, the protagonists, are the ones that really started this whole thing. If they would have given the egg back, the movie would have been over. It's like, okay, bye, thank you, see you later. And actually Godzilla still would have come, but they would have immediately not had to negotiate them coming to help. But yeah, the villains are definitely the linchpin to that particular story. And they're evil till the very end, and they turn on each other, as most films
similar to Junko and Sakai, Takarada and Yuriko Hoshi, where there's like a class
correct
difference. Yeah. You definitely can see that class difference between Torahata, Kenji Sahara's character, who's like business suit kind of
but slimy,
bad
oily,
guy,
slimy.
slick, oily
Yeah.
business suit kind of bad guy, and Kumiyama, who is probably a little bit of a pulling up his bootstraps bad guy. You know, like he probably made his way up to where he is by being like a little bit of a boss, a little bit of a gangster, a little bit of a bad guy, and that's how he got to his position. But there's still, he's not up into the Torahata class of bad guy.
True. Sorry, Leslie. I just wanted to throw that little bit in there, but I apologize. Go for it.
Before I go to mine, let me expand upon that about the villains. I find it very ironic that in that particular scene, right, where Kumiyama and Torahata had their breakdown, right? Even though he shot Kumiyama in the back of the head, but his wound is in the front of the head. But yet he didn't have an exit wound on the. Okay, anyways, it's show. I ain't worried about it. But I find it very ironic that, you know, technically in the film, that's one thing, like I said, about these Godzilla films in regards to the human story. You know, you also have human villains too before the big monster villain shows up. And in that one scene, because in the beginning of the film, Kumiyama makes his appearance. So that's the first villain you see. Then you see Torahata, which is the second villain. And it's kind of ironic that in that scene, the first villain gets taken out by the second villain, but then the main villain of the film takes out the first two villains.
Right. That's right.
And to me, that's like great Inoshiro Honda storytelling at its best. Kind of like Rodan, where you get like a monster movie within the monster movie, where, you know, you think it's a giant bug movie before Rodan shows up. To me, that's like one of the best things about the Showa period and Inoshiro Honda storytelling at its best. But for me, as far as like my favorite characters, and I kind of go back and forth, right? Because there's so many to choose from. Where there's the lead reporter, Takarada, the scientists, Junko, Kumiyama, even the general, you know, that only has like maybe 2 or 3 scenes. I think he does a fantastic job, you know. But I love the banter between the editor and the egg guy. I mean, I love the banter between these two. I mean, the fact that the egg guy is afraid more of the editor than Godzilla himself is kind of funny. But I have to say, my favorite actors or actresses, I should say, I think my favorite characters in the film are the Peanuts or the fairies. I just love them. I mean, I know it's ridiculous, you know, those 6-inch size, 6-inch high ladies is very ridiculous, you know. But then again, so it's a giant moth and a giant fire-breathing dinosaur. But I have to say, they are my favorite characters. You know what? Before I go to my next topic about this particular discussion, let me ask y'all this one quick question, then we'll move on to it. Between these 3 films, Mothra vs. Godzilla, Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, which one do you feel the Peanuts had the best performance?
The original 1961 Mothra.
I'm going to have to say Mothra versus Godzilla, because they've already established who they are, and they sort of like get into their stride in this movie, and it's their high point for me. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm going to have to say this one, just because they figured out who the character was in the original. This one, they kind of expanded on that, and they're actually able to do things a little bit more. And then Ghidorah, they just kind of like, well, we're just kind of messengers at this point. Like we kind of take like a back seat to everything in a weird kind of way. I like them in this one because I feel like they're still part of the story for majority of it.
1992 Battle of Earth. No, I'm just kidding. I would go Ghidorah just for the sheer fact that them translating the scene where they're all talking is just
Good, yeah.
one of
It's pretty good.
the best monster scenes ever. Like Godzilla just like, nah, humans are trash. Why we gotta help them? It's just so them translating that, even though I agree they definitely had a much more complete character arc, or rather were much more involved in the plot in 64. Ghidorah, just that scene alone for me elevates it because of how important it is for the series.
Good point.
I gotta say, in this film in general, I think the reason why everyone has multiple characters that you can choose from is because this is probably like one of the best examples of when you make characters feel real. You know, when you're describing everybody and like their little nuances, those are all things that you can see someone doing. When someone comes home from work, what do? They relax. They're having a drink. Like you said, like, you know, Takarada's relaxing a little bit. Like, that's the thing. Like, everybody seems real.
This is it's like that firing on all cylinders thing. You've
Exactly.
incredible
Everything comes
direction,
together.
incredible writing, incredible acting, and the three of those together, plus all the other stuff about filmmaking, the million different parts of it, just made that magic. This is absolutely magic in this movie.
It is, and the scene that makes me really believe that it's Mothra versus Godzilla is the scene on Infant Island when all of a sudden everything seems hopeless, and they hear them singing, and they go through that cave into that beautiful oasis of green and flowers, and they sing that beautiful, haunting song. And even as a kid, I just was mesmerized by that. And that to me is like epitomize who they are and who Mothra is. And it's the contrast between Godzilla being, you know, huge, lumbering, destructive, evil force of nature. It's just so great to see that contrast and to see them get persuaded, you know, their humanity really comes through, even though that island has been dumped on, and like that's the only green left on the island, is as a line from the movie, and they were swayed to actually decide to help humanity in the rest of the world.
Do you think that's the same island from the original Mothra, or do you think they moved to a different island, or did the island get worse off as the years went on?
It's supposed to be the same island, but I think for budget concerns, it didn't look like the same island. I mean, they couldn't really go in depth too much with it. They really only showed that section of it. But as far as I know, Kyle, what do you think? It's the same.
I think it's the same island, but they were sort of like, they weren't counting on anybody to be like, hey, wait a second. In the 1961 movie, this island was, you know, it was.
This island had
yeah, there's basically like, there's three sets on the island. There's the beach. There's where they get captured,
and that weird turtle thing. What is that weird turtle skeleton? What is that?
Skeleton.
What the hell is that? Please explain that to me. Was it moving?
Gamera's baby.
Was that the wind? Why was it moving?
I think the official answer is that it was supposed to be the wind that was moving that, but yes, the skeleturtle, as it's been dubbed by fans, is definitely its own character. It's getting its own legs, you could say.
Do you think that was a Toho taking a shot at the Gamera franchise?
This is before the Gamera franchise, dude.
I was gonna say I don't think it was there at that point yet.
Yeah, this is 64. Gamera started the following year.
Sorry.
But honestly, I think that's one of those things. It's like a happy accident kind of thing.
Yeah,
totally. Budget constraints, you know, made the island seem a little more compact, a little more claustrophobic. Having said that, they spent their money wisely on the other sets and the beautiful, epic, sweeping sets and things like that we can probably talk about later. But anyway, Leslie, back to you, sir. That way.
No, I think AJ. AJ already answered. I guess for me, it would have to be, and it's tough because I think all the performances are great, and I think they are the best versions of the fairies. You know, nothing against Pear Bambi from Sea Monster, nothing against the Go-Go Dancers from '92 or the chicks from Tokyo SOS. I don't know who the heck they are, but I have to say the Peanuts are, without a doubt, in my opinion, the best version of the Peanuts. That being said, even though I am biased towards the film, I have to say I'm going with Mothra vs. Godzilla as like the best performance. You know, I mean, all performances are great, but I just like this one a little bit more. Now, before we go into the next topic, let me just give you a shout out to the chat. Check everybody, see how everybody's doing. Super
Hey,
Mr. Crazy Man. How y'all doing? Liam Foley, of course, you know, Gojo A51, Alex Sawyer, Elvin 9K, Jonathan Portman, Greg Betters. What's up, Greg?
Hey, Greg.
Kaiju Battle, Michael Farrell. Basically the same folks that were here, along with a few other folks have come in, and I hope y'all been enjoying the show. What we're doing basically is giving our honest opinions about this awesome film. And as I mentioned earlier, I plan on going into more of these films, and you never know, I may call upon you to come aboard and give your spiel on these great films. Just to give you a spoiler alert, I think my next film that I'm going to cover will be GMK. So I know Kyle and Sandra Sandra will be up here for that. So anybody out there who has GMK as their favorite or one of their favorites, I'm not too hard to find on Facebook. Maybe we can get together and AJ, you like GMK?
Yes.
Okay, well, you can come aboard too. Well, anyways, so just let me know, and then we can make it happen. Like I mentioned, I'm reaching out to people that I know that are certain fans of certain films, like Everett Grondin, Godzilla fan freaks. He loves Terror, Mechagodzilla. My great friend Butch Bollinger, he loves 1985. Phil the Kaiju King, he loves Mechagodzilla 74. Samson West loves Gigan. Of course, David and Kyle, they love Monster Zero, blah blah blah. So, you would definitely see your favorite pillars of this awesome community up here talking about our favorite Godzilla films, just films in general. Now,
can I
let's
just
go.
Really quickly point out something? Liam Foley said in the chat room that he loves the giant headdress that the chief on Infant Island is wearing. So as I'm watching this today, I'm like, well, that's definitely the dude that if I'm ever going to cosplay as a Godzilla character, that's my guy right there.
Yes. He's got a beard, too. You're stoked. You're set. You're set.
I don't have to cut it.
No.
It's long, too.
Let me just say, that dude...
that
dude,
he's not playing.
That dude, when he walked in, and it's like he looked at them like they owe him some child support money. It's like he was like this. They walk in, and he's like,
"Where have you been?"
And then I mentioned this before in another live stream, but it's funny now in the Japanese version. In that scene when they get there and they drink the thing to get the evil spirits cast away, whatever, they pretty much tell them right then and there why they're there. It's like, look, Godzilla's in Japan. We need Mothra to try and drive him away, blah, blah, blah. But in the American version, they dubbed over it and they don't really mention Godzilla until after what David said when they hear the singing and they go to where the fairies are, right? And the fairies ask them, like, I mean, we know why you're here, but really, what's going on? And then when the scientist says, you have to help us. Like you must ask Mothra to fight Godzilla. And the natives are like, oh hell no, no. You didn't say that when you got here. Now you didn't say that. Now that's a whole different ball game. I mean, I love how little differences.
After we gave you the red juice and everything, you asked for Mothra's help. What is wrong with you?
Exactly. It's like, and that's why I love the American version more so than the Japanese. Just certain little things that they add to these American versions of these films. Now, don't get me wrong. Not every Americanized version of this film gets it right. I will grant you that. By and large, I mostly love the Japanese versions. But there are a few versions, Americanized versions of these films that I actually do enjoy more than Japanese versions, and Mothra vs. Godzilla is one of them. Now, speaking of Mothra vs. Godzilla, let's go to the next topic. Let's go with our overall thoughts of the monster that gets top billing in this film. What is your overall thoughts of the mightiest monster of all creation, Mothra, and her role in this film?
Okay, I used to bristle at the idea of Mothra because, yes, as a newer fan, I was like, that's just a giant bug. But, you know, as I matured as a fan and started, of course, as many people know, like learning more about the films, learning more about their production, learning more about really what makes them better. Like this, the Mothra as an entity in the Godzilla monster landscape has really elevated over the years for me. So I really liked Mothra. I think she was done very well in this film, but I think that in terms of execution, I have some gripes with the filmmaking process in this movie. But in terms of the monster herself, I'm all aboard. I love her newfound powers that she has, which are still, in my opinion, very kind of acceptable. The yellow powder coming out, like as she's flying around, being able to grab Godzilla by the tail and pulling him back, like that's impressive stuff. And I'm sad that it took, good Lord, like 40 years almost for them to make a really believable Mothra in Tokyo SOS, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Totally true.
Everyone hates the 92 movie, huh?
No, I don't
hate the 92 movie. The 92 movie sits in a very special place for me because it was one of the first movies that I saw when I was like, oh my gosh, they continued making Godzilla movies, and then and so I was like, wow, this is awesome. But just as I keep watching it over and over the years, it's just like there's something it's the opposite of some of the Showa era films. I find something less enjoyable about the 92 film every time I watch it. And so like another 5 to 10 times, I'm going to be like, yuck about that film. But the 60s are really where it's at for me.
Go for it, David.
So, Leslie, real quick, are you going to talk about the American version versus the Japanese version? Is that a question you're going to ask, or should I talk about that?
Yeah, talk about it now.
All right, real quick. I agree with Kyle and Leslie when they say that, most of the time I prefer the original Japanese versions of these films. However, one of the all-time best dubbing jobs was done by American International and Tetra Studios. The dialogue is almost completely intact. It's a little bit different, but it's virtually the same. The voice actors really suit the characters. Like you'd think that's what their voice would sound like. Yeah. And most importantly, the frontier missile scene. Okay, that in itself makes me like the American version just a little bit better, because that is such a fantastic scene. And I've always been a fan of Godzilla versus military. Most people love Godzilla versus monsters. I love Godzilla versus military. I think those are the most realistic, awesome scenes in all of these films. Some done better than others. We were just talking about the Millennium, and that's a whole other story. But in this particular film, it just blows me away that they actually called in the American forces to come and help them try to destroy Godzilla on that. I guess that was Nishi Beach. Was that or I can't, it's different in each version. Yeah. Some beach on the coast of Japan, near Nagoya, where he appeared, and
I think it's made up, by the way.
Oh, it might be made up. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Toho was very liberal with making up locations for their movies. Right. Not everything was real.
Well, whatever that beach is, it was a great scene. I mean, the way they depicted the dunes and everything, and the special effects when the missiles were launching, that was pretty realistic. And the way they orchestrated the explosions when the animated bomb would hit was just pretty top notch to me. And I really, really love that. And I'm hoping that one day there will be a release of the original Japanese version where they include the frontier missile scene in like high definition and really good quality, because that is such a great scene and I love it. So I just wanted to throw that out there. And as far as the way I feel about Mothra, I don't think Mothra's ever looked so good animated. The way Mothra was flying and the way she would sort of hover over Godzilla in the main battle scene, the movements were very realistic. There's a couple of technical issues, but overall, that puppet, that figure looked alive to me. It really did. And, I have a really high suspension of disbelief when it comes to these films, but
we all do.
In all honesty, some of the things that happen, like for example, when Mothra is pretty much almost dying and she hovers over, kind of floats over to the egg, puts the wing on the egg, and the way the puppeteers sort of like just stop, like she's you can almost see the breathing, and then the breathing just stops and the head just kind of stops and stands still, and it looks like it's a real animal that's dying. And whether that was on purpose or a happy accident, it doesn't really matter, because it just works. And
can we talk about this real quick? Because
sure.
You're talking about this scene. I actually, as I was watching the movie today, what happened to the Mothra carcass?
Oh, good question.
Did the Japanese government take that and start studying the giant moth from Infant Island? Like, where did that go? They just
go? That's a real, now see, if Torihata and Kumiyama were like decent people, they just wait till it all plays out, and then they could display the corpse, or in a circus or something. They could stuff it.
Maybe Godzilla came back and ate it.
Godzilla came back and ate it. And
Torihata's father takes over and is like, we're gonna do this right.
And this is going back to AJ when he said in the beginning, Godzilla was all he wanted to do. His motivation was to eat Mothra's egg. Now, did he want to eat it, or did he just sense an enemy was inside and he wanted to destroy it before the enemy could challenge him? So I'm not sure about that. What do you guys think?
He had a right plan because, as we all know, the enemy he probably should have taken them out before they were born.
I don't know if Godzilla would actually eat. We never really see what Godzilla eats in any of the films except for 85. He eats the radiation.
No, that's a lot of fish.
He doesn't even really eat the radiation.
Yeah, and look, come on, AJ, no.
I had to hit you with the Geno, man. I had to hit you with it.
Oh, you hit me with it. Yeah, you hit me with it, and it hurt.
Don't you have any new thoughts? We're talking about Godzilla versus Mothra 92, Godzilla 98 now. What is going on?
Now,
Giuseppe in the chat says that she magically disintegrated. Like, I'm guessing like a Force ghost in the Star Wars movies.
Maybe. Yeah. And then she'll show up in the specialized version as the 92 Mothra.
It's all coming together now.
Yeah, it is. See? No, I just think that she looks fantastic in that movie, and the only time she even looks like almost as good is in SOS, and I think that just took what they did, as Kyle said, a step further and sort of made that character super believable. The Mothra larvas I thought were really great, except for there's one scene when they're on Iwo Island, and you can kind of see the little wheel going in there. One scene, it's like that. That's the only like flaw really from that scene, because they look great too. The Mothra larvas have never looked that good and have never moved that way. But yeah, I mean, Mothra's great. As Kyle said, at first I was not stoked that a giant moth beat my favorite like giant dinosaur. But again, he didn't die. He just got defeated. Whatever. So enough about me. How about you, William? What do you think of Mothra in this film?
So we must have been watching a completely different film, because on the cover of mine, my Mothra had all these tentacles and all this stuff. So like it was a very unique take on the whole Mothra in my opinion.
Oh, you mean the thing? Yeah.
Yeah.
We didn't even talk about that. Yeah.
Like, I mean, talk about like false advertisement on that completely. Like, if you were expecting something like that, and you turn this on and that's what you got, I don't know what you're thinking. But no, I mean, honestly, this Mothra is pretty much the version that I think of when I think of Mothra. Through all different types, through all the different eras and everything. I think this is the one that I kind of go back to. This is like prime Mothra. It just works. I love the size. I think that's the one thing that I don't like about newer Mothra designs, is that they've kind of made her smaller as the years have kind of gone on. I like the fact that, when Mothra is big, she can actually kind of go one-on-one with Godzilla. Her wings are massive in this movie. She's able to knock Godzilla down, carry him. Like, it just kind of makes it a little bit more believable, when she's fighting, as crazy as it is to say something like that. I don't know. I think it works. I think her powers in this one, as Kyle was saying, fit her character, because this is still sort of the era of, this is right before the huge takeoff of, crazy, monsters for Godzilla to fight. Every movie that Godzilla was fighting to that point was very animalistic. You had Angus.
Yes. Every kaiju that they'd come up with, Toho had come up with, was kind of animal based.
Yeah.
Up to this point, yes.
Yeah. You had Anguirus, who didn't really have any special powers. It was more just grappling. King Kong is the same way, and now you have Mothra. So it kind of makes sense. They're evolving, and this is still the Godzilla who doesn't really use his atomic breath. I mean, that's one thing in this movie that you don't really see all that much. He uses it more, but he doesn't use it as much as you think he would. So it all works together, and she's never looked better in this film. And the larva, I would also agree with you. I don't know what it is. After this film, for some reason, I guess either Toho lost these costumes or these props, because they were never able to kind of make her work again correctly. Like the larva never looked, they never looked right for some reason. I don't know what
They
it is.
probably kept the prop and it sat in storage for 8 years. And
Yeah,
then
that's
they like
probably
brought
true.
it back out for Destroy All Monsters.
I will say this, the reason why I like the larva more in this one is because of the eye color. Mothra with red eyes in Destroy All Monsters never looked right to me. I don't know what it is. There's just something really strange about it. And this one, everything was just perfect when it came to Mothra.
I agree.
AJ.
Yeah, for me too. This was the, first time I was exposed to Mothra, and that's pretty much all I ever needed. The original Mothra movie, I dig it, but I just love the more furry look of 64, and then 92, just not as fuzzy. I don't know. I just like fuzz. The hair fuzzy. The Tokyo SOS is like an amazing revision of the 64 in my opinion, and hopefully we get a toy of that at some point. But anyway, well, I'm sure we'll get to toys later. But yeah, no,
sculpture.
Yes, the Mondo sculpture looks amazing. But yeah, no, this Mothra is great. To Will's point, I do love that in especially these movies, the winged creatures are a lot bigger than Godzilla, so it does look like they'd put up a bigger fight. Like same thing like with Rodan, as the Heisei series, and then the King of the Monsters, like Rodan's half the size of what he was in the Showa movies. I mean, what Fire Rodan, he like grabs by the neck and he's like, "Get out of here." So yeah, I love the scale. That I would love to see a diorama piece of her holding the tail and like dragging him while he's like basically clawing and screaming.
I think there's a model kit of
There
that.
is a model kit.
Model kit,
There is one. There is.
All right. Well, I can't
Yamakaya,
paint, David, as you know.
Well, we'll talk about that later, but
Yes.
you'll be happy with what I have to say. But anyway.
Ooh. So yeah, for me, definitive Mothra, absolutely love it. Yeah, that's all I got. Everyone else pretty much hit everything. Leslie, on to you.
Well, for me, I have to say, I think the best looking Mothras came from the Millennium series. I love the GMK version of Mothra, Tokyo SOS, and Final Wars. I think they're like the best, cosmetically, at least the best looking versions, of the entire series. I mean, the Heisei is fine if you like Macy's Thanksgiving parade float type of thing, whatever. But I think the Millennium series has the best looking Mothras. That being said, I think Mothra from this film has the best character, even more so than the original. And I say that because, and that's another thing, going back to Inashiro Honda with the storytelling, we don't know that Mothra is dying. That's not revealed until like when they go to the island and they, when they agree to send Mothra after Godzilla, that's when it's revealed that she's dying. So when I first saw it, I was like, wow, like I wasn't expecting that. You see what I'm saying? But I think her character, which is something I don't see a lot of folks talk about, the fact that her character is very, very brave. And at that point, when she's dying and she's going up against a monster that she knows she won't be able to win, but she fights him anyways. And to me, that is a very, very noble thing. I think it's a very Japanese thing, kind of like the World War II thing. They knew they were going to lose, but they were still willing to die for their country. Something like that, right? Mothra is kind of like the same way character-wise. I know it's just like a stretch reaching, but that's what I come up with. And I'm like that. I mean, I take it back. I ain't like that. When I play video games, if I'm playing against Sandra and I know she's whipping my tail, I know I have no chance of winning against her, I'll just drop my controller and walk the hell off. I mean, because I can't take defeat well. Sandra is the exact opposite. Even if she knows that I'm winning against her, she will still fight until the end. It's like it's not over until it's over. And if I'm going down, I'm going down fighting. So that's what I love most about Mothra from this film. Even though she does take top billing, I like the fact that she's really not all over the place. That's one thing about Mothra. That's the common criticism. They bring her back and she's overexposed or she's overutilized or whatever. But even though she takes top billing in this film, technically Godzilla's the real star, not Mothra. And I love how Mothra is only in the film when it's absolutely needed. But most of all, I love her character. I so love her character. It is awesome. And you just feel for her. You know that when she's fighting Godzilla, and it's not. I wouldn't call it like a fight like in King Kong versus Godzilla. If anything, Mothra in this film is trying to drive Godzilla away. It's trying to just make him go away by any means necessary. And Godzilla can't really defend himself. Now, mind you, this ain't the Godzilla from '73 that has a black belt in MMA fighting. It's not that version of Godzilla, But yes, what I love most about Mothra is her character, and she is awesome. Now, before we go into the next monster, let me ask this one question real quick, because after the next monster we're going to talk about, I got 2 more topics on top of that. And like I said, I want to be done like around 7, and it's like 55 minutes towards that. So before that happens, and thank you so much for being a part of this and staying here with us. This has been a fun discussion, as you have heard. But let me ask this one question, and David alluded to earlier. And I saw a kind of a back and forth on this a few weeks ago involving this topic that I'm about to at least ask this question and just give your answer real quick. But, and everybody in the chat, if you hear it, pipe in your answer too. But that object that Junko finds in the beginning of the film that they don't really explain what it is. There are some people who believe that's part of Godzilla's skin or his dorsal plates. There are some people who believe that is like a decomposed form or decomposed piece of Mothra's egg. So everybody here, my host, what is your take? What is that thing that they never explain that's highly radioactive, mind you? What is that one object that we see in the beginning of the film? Go, Kyle.
I literally do not know why there's any question about this. It's definitely it's a skin cell of Godzilla. It's where Godzilla is hibernating after the typhoon washes him into the shore of that area outside of Nagoya. And B, it's radioactive. So it's not where Mothra's egg happens. Mothra's egg was on Infant Island, got carried away by the typhoon into a completely different beach.
That's right.
Was it Karada Beach? Anyway, it doesn't matter where it was. They weren't in the same area. So I would definitely, it's like obviously a piece of Godzilla. So I'm just going to say it's a skin cell.
So I'm going to tell you what I think it is and what I know it is. Because August Ragoni, we all know August. We had a post about this a couple months ago, and he confirmed what it actually is from Toho. So what I think it is, and I kind of still think it is, and I want to think it is, I think it's a piece of Godzilla's dorsal plate. Now, let me tell you why. Because a skin cell makes sense, and that's what it actually is. It's a piece of skin from Godzilla that was sort of like scraped off during the typhoon. And that's what it actually is. That's what Toho says it is. August says it is. And I don't disbelieve that. But when I look at it, it doesn't look like a piece of Godzilla's skin. Godzilla's skin has like ridges, and the color is different. And when you look at Godzilla's dorsal plates, it kind of looks like a chink out of his dorsal plate because of the coloration of it. And yes, sir. Well, not that color, but yes, it looks like it came out of one of those parts. And I'm still going to stand by my belief that it is a part of his dorsal plate, even though I really know it's part of his scraped off skin. But
there's skin on his dorsal plates, aren't there? I mean,
I
who
don't
knows?
know. Who knows? But yeah, I definitely know that it's not a part of Mothra's egg. Mothra's egg washed up on Nishi Beach, and Godzilla appeared on Tarada Beach. So those are the two different areas. I don't know how close they are together, but different beaches. And I don't think the egg would be as radioactive necessarily as a piece of Godzilla would be, even though it was affected by radiation on an island. But if it's that highly radioactive from that little piece, it's got to be something from Godzilla's body. And I'm going to stick with my piece of dorsal plate. How about you, William?
Yeah, I didn't realize this was something that was actually talked about in like great detail, like what it is.
Heavily debated.
Yeah,
about Godzilla.
Oh man, I don't know what I'm flipping into here.
Is this not why you were here?
Yeah.
This is the whole main part of it. That's it.
This is why Leslie wanted us. He doesn't care about any of our other thoughts. He wants to get to the bottom of this.
The burning question.
I mean, I always assumed it came off of Godzilla. You know, whether it's a dorsal plate or skin or something like that. Like, I didn't think that was any different. You know, I always just assumed that's what was the case. Because one, I can't imagine being Mothra's, any part of Mothra, her egg or anything along those lines, because at no point did they ever say that that egg is radioactive. I mean, I assume that there's some radioactivity like with it just because of where it came from.
Exactly.
But they never say, they're like, oh, you spent way too much time, you need to go into that. They're literally talking about this, and the only monster that we kind of know that when it comes to radioactivity is Godzilla. That's that deadly. So I always just assumed it came from Godzilla's skin or dorsal plate. If David, we want to go that way. But,
Yep. Plus, when they're scraping pieces of Hiroshi Koizumi's scraping pieces off of the Godzilla egg, it looks nothing like that piece.
Yeah,
it looks absolutely nothing like that piece. So, no egg. No.
Yeah, the egg's not missing a giant piece either.
No.
You know what I mean? Like it's completely intact.
That's right.
While all my co-hosts here make very logical points.
Oh boy!
Oh, here we go.
Here we go.
It's Mothra's eggshell, and these this is why. This is why. All right, let's get a little close up in here. Okay. Oh, my green screen's ruined it. Oh no.
It looks different than in the movie.
That looks like an Easter egg. That's from Easter Island.
Yeah. Man, why is it doing that? The green, it's not blue. It's not green. Anyway, for me, the color as a kid, the colorization always looked very similar to the egg. And then with the shore and everything like that, with it all, the whole water-based thing. And then the thing that always made me think that it was a part of Mothra's egg was when you watch the movie, the segue into that scene of that piece is, again, Mr. Eggman holding his egg. I forget what he says, and then they literally cut to that next. So I don't know why. I just always was like, yeah, it's part of Mothra's egg. Of course it is. And then, aren't we to believe that all the monsters are radioactive? Right?
I've never really subscribed to that.
Because
every single
I don't
one of them
think
is a
Kong
radioactive
is
monster.
or Angulus. I don't think those two are for sure.
So-
The ones
so-
that came
Or
before.
Rodan.
So Godzilla's the only one that was like just magically created by the
Mothra,
bomb?
Mothra, I always assumed was like kind of almost like a god, or goddess, I should say. Like so, like I always felt like she was something completely different, not so much radioactivity. Maybe, like I said, maybe they might have like touches of it, but like Godzilla to me is the one that's always been, viewed as he's super radioactive. You don't want to go near him.
Actually, Kyle, in the American version of Rodan, I'm not sure what the dialogue is in the Japanese version, but the theory is that Mothra's egg, Rodan's egg was hatched because of the warm water from nuclear a nuclear test warmed the water that sort of made Rodan
I know that's
hatch,
what I know the American version has that whole beginning part of Rodan.
Oh, right.
That
That
whole
throwaway
beginning
part,
was
yeah.
like
on
this
target.
is what happens when nature rebels,
On target.
Look at that colorization there. Come on, guys. Come on. It's so close.
Hey, it is close.
It's so close.
And
That's more of an April theme. We're in November right now.
The great thing about this, after Leslie tells us what he thinks it is we can all think what we want. We can all how we remember it. Even though we know what it really is, we can all have our own theories and whatever makes us happy. So
I'm just going with the theory of when I was a kid, because again,
that's perfect.
all of your points are extremely logical, and I'm most likely wrong. But as a kid, I was like, "That's an eggshell."
So, Leslie Chambers, now let's hear it from you, from the Mothra versus Godzilla guru. What do you think it is?
To me, you put two and two together. Let's look at the facts, okay? Let's look at the facts,
Number
okay?
one.
No, there's no
Number
facts.
one.
No facts. None.
There's facts here, daggone it, and we're gonna get into them. Here's the fact: the piece of skin, or at least the object, was found in the same area that Godzilla will eventually rise up out of. Right? The object is radioactive.
That's two.
The only people that came in contact with it were the reporters, and they had to be, decontaminated or whatever.
De-radioactivated.
Or de-radioactive or whatever. Now,
Just made that up.
But of course,
if that's Mothra's egg, I'm going to entertain your idea, Aj, for a little bit. Now, if that was Mothra's eggshell, or at least a fragment of it, that means Kumayama, the reporters, the scientists, everybody would have radiation sickness and they would have died before the movie was over. So, in my opinion, I just think that and that's one thing I would change about the movie. I love Mothra vs. Godzilla. It's the perfect movie for me. That's the one thing I would change. One line would just set everything straight, even though it's kind of like forgot about. But I think they should explain what it was. But actually, I kind of like go both ways on that. I kind of think that not the reason, but I kind of love that they don't really explain, because when they, when the object is first revealed, right, then it transitions to the whole monster egg thing. So you really forget about the whole object thing until after it comes back, after it's revealed that the people are radioactive or whatever. Now, I think had they pushed that more and say, oh, this thing is highly radioactive, it would have been on people's mind like, okay, maybe Godzilla's here. Because that's the one thing I would say about this film. Because this is the first film in the Showa series that doesn't hint at Godzilla's presence at all. Like, you may hear his roar in the original. You see him fight Anguirus early on in Raise Again. You see him pretty much in the beginning of the movie in King Kong versus Godzilla. But Godzilla is not mentioned at all until he makes his appearance, and I'll talk more about that when it's my turn to talk about Godzilla.
That's a good point.
But when it comes to the radioactive object, I do believe that it's part of Godzilla's skin. Because he was pretty much the only thing in the movie that was radioactive, so it kind of makes sense. But I understand your point, AJ. I can understand, but that's Toho's fault for not really explaining that. That way we have these fan theories on what really happened and blah blah blah.
Like you said, a lot of that makes sense. A lot of it does. But I'm just kidding. Yeah, I know Toho may say something, and it's most likely true. I can't even act it anymore. Yeah, it's Godzilla. It's Godzilla's skin.
I think it's a way to kind of hint at another monster, and it's maybe not done as well as it could have been, because if you think about it, the first 25 minutes of this movie is very Mothra centraled. Like, it is all about her, and you kind of almost forget there's a versus in this. So I think maybe if they kind of done a little bit differently, it was kind of a way to hint that, hey, there's something else here. Just wait and see what it is.
But that's a good thing, William, because it gave the audience a chance to get acquainted with the characters and to care about the characters, exactly. And to get them to a point where, somebody said before, we actually care if they live or die. That's my problem with some of these newer ones. I could care less whether these people live, die, go solve it, whatever. Yeah. I think that the fact that Godzilla doesn't show up till quite some time in the film, and we're all still engaged in it, I think that's says so much about the storytelling and how successful it actually is.
Agreed.
You mean you didn't care at the end of King of the Monsters when the mom died?
I'm joking.
We don't gotta get off topic.
So she died.
I would assume so. Didn't King Ghidorah just stomp her out and she was like, "Long live the king"? No one cared.
I think tuned out after the 2-hour mark.
Yeah.
He was like, "Wait, she's still in the movie?"
He tears me up.
Now we got let's see, 3 more topics to go. Now, let's go to the main star of this film. Let's go to the villain of this film, Godzilla, the 1964 Godzilla, the Motu Goji in all his glory. Yes. So, what's your overall thoughts to Godzilla in this film? His role? Do you enjoy the fact that they brought Godzilla back to a more serious interpretation at the King Kong versus Godzilla? Do you love him more as a villain or as an anti-hero, whatever you want to talk about in regards to the 1964 Godzilla and his role and his particular role in this film? The floor is yours. Kyle, go for it.
All right. So number 1, absolutely my favorite Godzilla design from the Showa era. The 1954 one is fantastic as well and iconic, of course, but there has never been a cooler looking Godzilla than the 1964 suit, in my opinion. That's the suit, the look, those hooded eyes, the jowls, the fact that he's kind of lean. It's before they plumped him up, and I'm a big fat guy, so I like big plump things. I'm just saying, he was skinny in terms of it just being a monster and a little more animalistic. Yes, and I definitely think that in this film, because he shows up, and it's how would I say this? When Godzilla shows up, it's not like, hey, something's wrong and I've got to go take care of it, or something's here and I've got to go defeat it. He just wakes up
Yep.
and he's cranky. And he's like, what's the city doing around me? And he just starts destroying Nagoya. So, in my opinion, this is like kind of the perfect Godzilla as a character to me, especially since my first one was the '84 film. And like in my, gray matter up here, Godzilla is a force of nature, as Raymond Burr's character talks about him in that film. And so that's where I always want to think of Godzilla as like a force of nature, something we can't comprehend necessarily, something that we can't really fight necessarily, and that his presence is just dangerous. And in this movie, Godzilla's presence is absolutely dangerous. And I think, even though I love all of Godzilla's iterations, he's never looked cooler in the Showa era, never looked cooler than he did in '64.
I agree with everything Kyle just said. Now, when Godzilla was sort of tumbles off the cliff at the end of King Kong versus Godzilla, the reason that we don't see him is because he gets covered by the landslide, by an earthquake. He's covered in the mud already. And then over the years, that mud sort of shifts to, Torada Beach, where he emerges from. Now, the Godzilla design, to me, when I think of Godzilla in my head, I automatically go to the '64 design. It is the quintessential Godzilla for me, as far as I'm concerned. I like Godzilla more as sort of the anti-hero / villain, force of nature, than the superhero. And I love the fact that the film people decided to slim down the suit so Nakajima could give a more convincing performance. And this suit was created by the Yagi brothers and an artist named Izo Kaimai. So they're responsible for Godzilla the way he looks now, with very slender, the long, sinuous tail, and the evil cat-like eyes. He's decidedly more mammalian in this film, as opposed to in King Kong versus Godzilla. He's very reptilian, and I just love the way he sort of evolved. And I guess the filmmakers did too, because essentially the same suit was used twice. Again, in 1964 for his appearance in Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster. They just changed the eyes and the tongue a little bit, but other than that, it's the same suit, essentially. I love the way he moves. I love the way he acts. Like, I don't know that he's necessarily destroying things. Sometimes he is, but sometimes he's just kind of walking to where he wants to go, and the cities are in the way. And now, a controversial scene, or not a controversial scene, but a scene that people talk about a lot, is when he destroys Nagoya Castle. Now, the fact that he actually doesn't go to destroy it, he doesn't jump down and start destroying it. He was actually trying to get around it, and he slips. And that's what a big creature would do, as did Nakajima, and he falls into it, and then he says, while I'm down here, I might as well just wreck it. It's in the way, get it out of the way. So again, that's another sort of happy accident. When I saw it as a kid, I didn't really appreciate it that much. I thought he should just go, destroy it, but that would make no sense, because why would he just destroy an inanimate object that's just standing there? And another thing that I'll talk about really quick is that scene was filmed early on in the filming. And when he fell into the building, the skin on his jowls kind of got knocked loose. Mm-hmm. And the scene where he appears at Torada Beach, where you can clearly see the jowls are not attached to the part of the face, that the headpiece, it actually, when he shakes, it kind of shakes, and it looks very realistic. And again, realistic. That's a happy accident. Like, I love that they left that in there. And I think they went on to repair it, but I think they should have kept it, sort of loose like that. I guess they didn't want it to fall off. But the fact that, when he did that shake in the beginning and you see the jowls, I thought that was so cool. I love that. It's just a great design for me. And I like most of the designs in the Showa era, and they're all sort of iconic, but this 64, he's never looked so so monstrous, so scary. He looks pretty scary. He doesn't look like a happy guy, and I just absolutely love it. And it's the one Godzilla that comes to my mind when I think of Godzilla. So, how about you, William?
Well, I mean, stop me if you heard this before. It's the best suit, best Showa suit. It's probably a top 3 suit of all time. It worked. When Leslie was talking about Mothra's character and how she's pretty much essentially a good character, a good guy or good woman in that sense. This is Godzilla as a bad guy. And he still is, even in King Kong versus Godzilla, he's portrayed as the bad guy as well. He's still in that weird, he's still considered the villain. And because of that, it works. His beast-like, abilities and going up against Mothra, it all works so perfectly. Design-wise, I don't think they, David, you talked about when they kind of basically kept the same design for the next film. But yet, though, the slight changes that they made doesn't work. The suit all of a sudden doesn't look as good as this one.
Stiffer, right?
Yeah.
It's not as good. It's not as good. It's close, but it's not as effective. I agree. I do agree.
It's this weird. And there are like happy like accidents, and that's part of filmmaking in general. Is that a lot of times the things that you really love are because they couldn't figure something out, like Jaws. So they use turtles. You know what I mean? Like, and everyone loves Jaws for a lot of that stuff. But this is another perfect example. It's so good in so many ways. The thing that I really like about this film, though, is this is the first film that basically says Godzilla is indestructible. Going forward, there is nothing that can really hurt him at this point. Like Tricky was still sort of a thing, but even that he was kind of able to get around. But like military weapons, unless you had like a special military weapon or something, a plan, you weren't stopping them with regular tanks and planes and things like that. I mean, you could try setting them on fire, but it's not going to stop them.
They did. He was on fire in this movie.
He was.
Yeah, he was.
It's just like I said. It's a near perfect suit in every way. There isn't a bad angle. He's first part of the film. He's kind of like a little bit of still waking up because he gets his tail stuck. He falls into a building. Like he's still like he's still trying to figure out everything.
He's looking for his coffee.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
Yes, he is.
I mean, I don't know. Everyone's gonna say it. It is just a near perfect design for a Godzilla suit, and it is the best Showa period suit without a doubt.
Well, the military did have plans, William. They had Plan A, Plan B, and Plan C. C was just to run.
Yeah.
A was completely ineffective, and B almost worked if the stupid humans who wanted to press it further than it would go. I mean, that electricity might have really done some serious damage to him, but they wanted to increase the power, increase voltage. It just went, and that was that. And then they had to go on to Plan C, which is just basically get the hell out of there, Yeah. So, indestructible. You're right.
Go, AJ.
So, for me, I'm getting the background there.
Oh, there you go.
I mean, that's it. That face, those eyes,
For
like
real.
a doll's
Only
eyes.
mother
But
can love.
I mean, cranky. Let me get this big box out of here. Hold on a second.
What's in the box?
That's the.
You can trade it all in for what's in the box.
Yeah.
Oh, not that box. I saw what it is.
So like for me, this as a kid growing up, I just loved how mean he always looked. In almost every scene, he just looks pissed off. Like again, like he just woke up. I don't care about what's happening around me. And then when you wake up, what do you need? You need breakfast, and there's a big egg, and you gotta go get it.
That's a good point.
And then, also the emergence scene is for me iconic because is there any other scene where he comes up from the ground? No, right? That's pretty much it.
Not really. I mean, he
Not
explodes out of a building and some movies, but yeah, that's it's such an amazing.
It comes out of a volcano. Yeah,
his appearance in this movie specifically
is
phenomenal.
just and then like you said, like the shake when he actually has all the dirt on him and he just shakes it off, and it's just great. And then one of the things that I really liked about this movie too is I feel like this was the closest, especially for the Showa films, where the puppet head that they had actually looked very similar to the suit head.
Yeah.
Because usually every time they had the puppet, you were like, that's different. Like, what Godzilla is that? Is that a different one? Oh no, okay, it's the same one. But yeah, this was the first time where they matched it up a lot better for those like close-up shots when him and Mothra are going at it. But yeah, and to Kyle's point, like they just trimmed him down, but he still felt like powerful. Like he wasn't like, oh, like there's skinny Godzilla, maybe he should go eat something. Keep going back to eating. I don't know. Maybe I'm still hungry.
Are you hungry? Are you hungry?
I just had pizza. I don't know if anyone saw, but it just not enough apparently.
It's early here. It's only 3:30 here.
Now we're at almost 7:00 over here. And then another thing that I love too, because the thing that really bothered me in like King Kong vs. Godzilla was how they had to like really bring up Kong's imaginary BS powers and like depower Godzilla. So I always hated how like in Kong, Godzilla like sees a electric fence and is like, oh, ooh, ouch. This one he was like, no, we're gonna none of that. So like I like how they brought that back and like you said, made Godzilla powerful again. So yeah, and again, drew this one. I don't know what it is about the eyebrows, but they're just the best. I don't know how else to put it, but especially as a kid drawing it, it was always like, all right, gotta have these big eyebrows, a little eye. Like, it was great. So yeah, quintessential is the perfect word. He's the best. I don't think we have anyone on this panel that's gonna. I think we're all here for that reason, right?
Absolutely.
Sorry, go ahead, Leslie.
Let me just say, as far as like my turn, my favorite design. I just love this. I love the King Kong vs. Godzilla suit, but I do love how they took the dorsal plates. Because that's one thing I love about the King Kong vs. Godzilla suit. I love his dorsal plates, how they're arranged, and I love how they brought it into this version of Godzilla. They slid him down where he looks menacing from the side and he looks menacing from the front. Whereas the King Goji, he looks menacing from the side, but it's like a Muppet Baby from the front. That's the one thing I didn't really care for the 62. But in regards to the role of Godzilla in this film, now, with King Kong vs. Godzilla, they were starting to bring Godzilla into the more zany type of just really silly territory and give him more of a personality. I'm glad that in this film, I think Inoshiro Honda got his way, because I think between the two, Aj Russo wanted the film to be more child friendly, and he wanted more child appealing moves when it comes to the monsters. But I don't think Honda really agreed with that philosophy. He loved the monsters when they were more serious characters. And I love that this is really the final film in the Showa series where you see Godzilla as a pure badass villain. And it's one of the few Godzillas that, even when his mouth is closed, he looks so sinister. I actually prefer him with his mouth closed and open. But whether his mouth is closed, is open, the hooded eyes, the dorsal plates, the slim nature of the sculpt of the suit, the dark charcoal gray skin, even darker than the 62. I just love it in terms of design. Now, his role, as I mentioned earlier with the radioactive object thing, that Godzilla is not even mentioned not one time. He's not referenced. He's not foreshadowed. He's nothing. And when he pops up out of nowhere, it just seems like everything just stops. The egg situation stops. Petty problems that people have with each other suddenly it's not important anymore. It's like Godzilla is back, and it's like the mentality
is stop the presses moment.
Exactly, and it's like Godzilla is back, and we have to kill him before he kills us. And it's really a sense of doom and gloom. Like when Godzilla returns, and it's like people just basically give up hope. In a way, I wish they kind of responded to him like this in King Kong vs. Godzilla, and you think they would, since that, he comes back after 7 years after thinking he was gone forever. So, the way they're fearful in this film to Godzilla is how I think they should have done in King Kong vs. Godzilla. And it's one of the few Godzilla films that when Godzilla does come back, when he pops up and starts rampaging, even when Godzilla is not on screen, you know he's around. You know he will eventually show up. You know he will eventually just destroy everything. And that's what I love mostly about this version of Godzilla. And I recall a certain YouTuber, I'm not going to say his name, but he made a video regarding Shin Godzilla and saying that version of Godzilla has no personality, and that's like one of the biggest downfalls of Godzilla. And I respectfully absolutely disagree, because I think this Godzilla kind of has something common with Shin Godzilla. He's a walking disaster. He does not have a specific route where he's going to go, what he's going to do, who he's going to kill. He just goes, and whoever or whatever happens to be in his way, you're going to have to suffer the consequences for it. And to me, that's frightening when you have a walking natural disaster embedded into this awesome monster. And the fact that he just runs wild and nothing can stop him. Like what William said, nothing can stop this thing. Of course, Mothra did, at the very end. But up until that point, the adult Mothra, the tanks, the bombs, the 2 military plants, everything they threw at Godzilla didn't work. And that's the main reason why I love this version of Godzilla. I love this movie. It's just an amazing design, an amazing performance by Nakajima. And I'm glad they were able to work out just one last villainous role for Godzilla in the Showa period before he would turn into the campy superhero. So that's my rationale behind why I love this version of Godzilla. Now, let's go. Oh, go ahead, William. Go ahead.
Oh, I just want to say 2 things. One, because you brought up a good point. The first thing is about this film that I like in general is that King Kong versus Godzilla, Mothra versus Godzilla, Ghidorah, and Monster Zero all feel like one big story. And when Godzilla appears, like you said, like people all of a sudden stop what they're doing and they're like, what? Oh, he's back? You know, like everyone kind of already knows who Godzilla is. Like the country understands like this is a crisis situation. and part of it, and listen, I won't lie, I like when I watch my Godzilla films, I watch them dubbed just because, they're a little bit easier just to watch, and I'm always usually kind of doing something and I'm, running around. But I always feel like the thing that I don't like is that, we're 10 movies in and everyone's like, Godzilla? You mean like this giant monster coming in? You're like, come on, man. Like King Kong versus Godzilla, like the American dub is like, the world is stunned to find out that prehistoric monsters exist. It's like, how did he get in the iceberg originally? You're like, we've dealt with him before. So this one, they kind of really already like, listen, we've dealt with him. We got to figure out now when we're kind of screwed.
There's continuity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody knows Mothra already. Everybody knows Godzilla
exactly.
already. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and real quick.
And the second thing with this guy is, and the final piece is that with this Godzilla, going back to not really caring what's going on around him, like it's the first time that I kind of really feel like humans are ants to them. Like we know we are, like when you look at them and like, the scaling, of course, we always know that, but like, just like how we kind of walk by and like, if we step on an ant, they can't do anything to stop us. You really get the feeling that there is nothing you can do. Because, he's walking and tanks are shooting at him. He's just walking on by. He doesn't care. It's not stopping him. Like, there's so many little things like that through this whole entire film that just make this Godzilla so perfect.
Absolutely. Now, real quick, I just wanted to say that this is sort of a landmark for Toho, because this is the first time 2 separate properties came together in a feature film. Because when we saw King Kong versus Godzilla, that wasn't Toho's property, and Anguillus wasn't in his own film before, but Mothra had her own film, and Godzilla had his own film. So this is the first time 2 actual Toho creations came together on the screen in epic Toho scope. And just mirroring what you all said, Leslie and William and Kyle, everybody, when he appears at the beach, it's terrifying. It's scary. He's scary. Mm-hmm. We're afraid of him, and he's like an unstoppable force. He's like going to the hotel, when Torahata sees him in the window, that's scary. It's scary. People are dying. He's killing people.
And it's a great shot too. That was a great shot.
Great shot. It's a great perspective shot. He's much less anthropomorphic than he is in King Kong versus Godzilla, where he's doing the thing. Having said
I love Happy Godzilla though. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta love
Me
Happy
too.
Godzilla. But
I need a
It
different
doesn't
guy
fit with the
doing
suit,
that.
you know. It doesn't fit with
No,
the
yeah,
Godzilla
it definitely
look,
doesn't.
yeah.
there are scenes in King Kong versus Godzilla that are very serious and very scary, like the NATO base scene, the scene where he attacks the train in Hokkaido. That's pretty scary. Like people are running for their lives, and the scene where the military is trying to get him in the trap, you know, and oh my God, he's still alive. That's scary stuff. It's only when he's with Kong that he's not that scary. You know, they sort of, you know, dumb his character down a little bit, as it were, to sort of be compatible with Kong. But those scenes, of course, are my favorites in King Kong versus Godzilla. You know, the serious scenes and where he is a threat, and they do know that it's Godzilla. And it's funny, it's actually not the Godzilla from '54. It's the one from Raids Again, because that one was killed. And, you know, Dr. Yamane says it's hard to believe that this is the only one of its species. So it's the one from Godzilla Raids Again, and it makes perfect sense. The iceberg drifts over there, and it's perfect. Yeah. And that's why the American version of William is ridiculous. Why would he be in something like that? Well, because that's what he did in the last film. The continuity, they ignored the continuity aspect of it, and that's why I hate the dubbing for the King Kong versus Godzilla. It's nostalgic, it's funny, it's great. It reminds me of being a kid, but it's terribly and not the right thing. And whatever. Anyway, sorry, I just had to throw that little tidbit in there, a little bit of Toho history in there. So
for everyone that loves the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Toho did it first.
Well, Universal did it first.
Yes, they did.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Oh, you're right.
Universal.
Yeah,
House of Frankenstein. That's right. Yeah. You're right.
Now, we got 2 more topics, and then we'll be out of here in like 15, 20 minutes. Now, this topic is probably the most controversial topic we're going to talk about. And, of course, I'm talking about the ending of this awesome film. Now, it's hard-pressed to find a fan that does not love this film. Even people who may find it overrated still say it's a good Godzilla film. But there's one thing about this film that does get under the skin of a lot of Godzilla fans, and it's the ending. How Godzilla basically has run roughshod over Japan, nothing to stop him. Mothra, the military, blah blah blah. But yet he is stopped by 2 newborn babies, and that is something that when I talk about this film and I sing the praises of this film, and I'm like, you know, tooting the horn for this film and then like a giant parade. That's the one thing that they always get me on. Like, your Godzilla is great, but he still got defeated by 2 babies. Blah blah blah. So I want to talk about that because I do defend the ending, and I'll talk about it when it's my turn. But I want to hear y'all take. Kyle, David, William, AJ. What is your opinion of the ending? Do you like it? Do you feel it's justified to get under Godzilla fans' skin? Do you think they could have done a better job with it? Does it sit right with you? Is it something that you're okay with it or not okay with it? The floor is yours. What do you think of the overall? What do you think overall about the ending to Mothra versus Godzilla?
Okay, so number one, I definitely have always felt it was kind of lame that he was defeated by babies. Let's just get that out of the way. It's just a small tidbit in what I'm about to say, though, because my issue with the ending has much less to do with the fact that he was beaten by baby larva moths, and is more about the fact that as the plot has progressed in this film, it's been super interesting, super engaging until Mothra, the adult Mothra form, dies. And once those babies hatch, it's kind of cool, but it gets much less. Like, that's the climax, really, is the Godzilla and adult Mothra fight, and the fight between the larva and Godzilla, plus the fact that they have to go to this island. The humans have to go to this island because a group of school children went to this island for their field trip that day. They chose the wrong day.
God, can you imagine going on a school trip when you know that Godzilla's in the area? Like, that whole entire piece, we're closing down schools with the virus and everything like that. Now, can you imagine? Well, Godzilla's like, I don't know, 20 miles away.
It's fake news. He's not there.
We'll go.
He'll go the other way.
Godzilla's not real. Get out of here.
But that plot device that they're it almost seems too forced. We got to keep pushing the story further out, right? So I don't really appreciate that as a sort of final act in the movie. Now I've got a lot more issues about the movie, technically speaking, but like that's probably my biggest takeaway, my biggest negative takeaway from this film, even though I freaking love this movie, is that the ending is just a little deflated for me. A little bit like the rock that Godzilla hit with his atomic breath that just...
Yeah, what is that? What the hell? I was going to talk about that. What? Yeah, that's rough. Yeah. Yikes.
But anyway, what about you, David?
All right. So for me, when I was a kid, I absolutely hated the fact that those two caterpillars defeated my dinosaur hero in the movie. I was actually very sad and very mad at that ending. But then upon, rediscovering it as an adult, I learned to really like the ending. I think that what Kyle said makes a lot of sense, and I never really thought about it that way. But now that he puts it that way, I kind of agree with him. Although it is a little forced and it's a little kind of random, it's basically like still kind of epic. And the fact that Akira Ifukube's score is so outstanding and so pounding and so powerful that we can almost forget all that other stuff when the Mothra larvas are following Godzilla up the top of the ridge, the cliff where he is. I don't really think he's chasing the children. I don't think he even knows they're there or cares. They're just in the wrong place at the wrong time, and they're just there for some extra added drama. But I still love that scene, and I love that it sort of builds and builds and builds. And one thing that we talked about off camera a couple days ago is there's one scene that always bugged the hell out of me, and it really, really, really makes me crazy that the editing was so lax, because there's a scene where the Mothra larvae start to cover Godzilla with silk. And he's got, good little thin layer of silk on him. And then he continues his walk up the mountainside. And then the next scene, he has no silk on him. And I'm like, oh, no. And it doesn't last very long, but you'll notice it when you watch it next time, those of you who are in the chat room. And it's always bugged the hell out of me. And also what Kyle brought up, that deflating rock, it's like, what WTF is going on here? Is that like a Mothra thing that she made to sort of like, I couldn't even justify it in any way, shape, or form. I have no idea what was going on in that scene. And, the fact that Godzilla really pounds that one Mothra larva that was attached to his tail, sort of like fast forward to Ghidra the three-headed monster, where the children are asking the Peanuts about the Mothra larvas. How are they? And she goes, oh, sorry. I'm sorry to say one of them passed away. I think that was the one. It suffered from that actual pounding, but he got his ass kicked. And I think he died because of that, from the trauma from that. That's what I think in my mind anyway.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
I love continuity, and when they do things like that, so I make it up even if it doesn't exist. So, and then I love the way they executed the silk around Godzilla. I think it's fantastic.
Yes.
And I think here's the thing that I'm going to sort of justify the ending. I think it really took Godzilla by surprise, because he was basically just like kind of strolling up the hill. Next thing you know, he's like covered, and he can't move and he can't breathe. And he's getting really angry and frustrated, as you can see with the atomic rays going all over the place. And he finally falls right before he tumbles over the cliff. And another tidbit that we talked about off camera, the actual suit that they used when he tumbles over is actually the 62 suit. Now, when you guys go back and watch that again, pause it, and you'll be able to see the silhouette of the reptilian 62 face on there. I guess they didn't want to get the entire suit wet because they were going to use it in the next film, whether they knew at that point or not. But be that as it may, it was the 62 suit that actually did the tumbling and falling into the water. So I think it was a plot device that needed to happen, because Godzilla needed to disappear somehow. And if he wasn't defeated by the Mothra larvas, the movie would just keep going on, right? So they needed to incapacitate Godzilla without killing him some way to continue him on, or else the movie would have just kept rampaging around through the countryside. So it was a necessary thing to have him be incapacitated and tumble over the cliff by the Mothra larvas. And again, if you want to look at it more of a spiritual way, good versus evil, beautiful and kind versus dark and whatever. Anyway, I've learned to like it. I've learned to appreciate it. I've learned to be okay with it. But as a kid, I absolutely hated that ending. And well, there you have it. How about you, William?
I would agree with you, David. As a kid, I think every kid hates the ending because everyone's rooting for Godzilla, even when he's the bad guy. My issue with this ending now is I'm starting to realize, like, as you watch these films, Toho had no idea how to end a lot of these films, because I think King Kong versus Godzilla, Mothra versus Godzilla, Monster Zero all end in the same way, with Godzilla falling into the water, and even in the Heisei period they do this. So I think they do really great up until the end a lot of times because they don't know how to end them. Especially this one, I think they kind of added on to it. Like if Godzilla and adult Mothra finished each other off in a way, like almost like how at the end of I can't believe I'm bringing up 92, but if Mothra carried Godzilla off the shore and dropped him into the water, and then she came and died on the egg, and the movie ends with the egg hatching, and then the twins and the larva going home and saying, "Oh, we'll always be friends. If you need something, you can always call to us." Like kind of like that. That's that's the ending right there. Like that's it. To me, anyway, that's how I would have ended the film. But I don't know. For some reason, they like dropping Godzilla into water some way, and I guess they just couldn't figure out ways to take him out. And I think because of this film, I think that's why you see Godzilla transition to those versus films more, because those all end a few minutes after the final battle, because it just makes sense at that point. But as far as when I saw it as a kid and seeing him being taken out by two larvae, it's just not great. You just can't believe it. It did have some great moments, like with the one larva attached to the tail, which I think has become iconic. You see it on figures now. The Defo Real figure as well comes to mind. So that's great. But it just seems tacked on because they need to extend that runtime maybe just a little bit longer because they didn't know how to end it.
Now we're being uber picky. This is a really good movie. Yeah. We're all being picky because if we do this to other movies, we could be here all night. So yes.
For me, when I was young, it was trash, and now as I'm older, it's still trash. This is the only movie where I think they filmed Godzilla. The shot behind me, I think, was when they filmed Godzilla seeing the movie and was like, "This is how it ends." This is his live reaction to it.
Wow.
I don't know. It's, again, like you said, like Kyle said, they're babies. So it's like the fact that they can take out a mature, I would assume adult Godzilla at this point is just. I would have liked, if I was to change it, I would have liked to see Godzilla at least kill one of them in some kind of struggle, and then,
He kind of did.
It ultimately dies.
Yeah, but I want to see it on screen, like tear it in half. You know what I mean? Just get crazy with it. Godzilla's like, get this crap out of here.
It shoves like a giant stick down the Mothra larva and then starts eating it like a piece of yakitori.
Exactly.
You're going to float here.
Dude, is hardcore.
I mean, yeah, so I would have liked to see him at least put up an actual fight against one of these things. Aside from he just looked like he was like, I don't know, maybe he was going to try to go to sleep or something. He just seemed like he wasn't really interested, and then he's just like, I'm cocooned away.
The way that they could have saved the ending would have been it's something they did much later in the series, have the humans work with Mothra and the larva together. So there was a concerted effort between the Mothra larva and the military. That would have been a great way to end the film, and you could have definitely amped up the climax, the ending climax.
I mean, it is nice to know that, like you said, in the next movie, they did hint that one of them died, and it's most likely because of that. But Yeah, I just didn't. For me, I was just like, this is. I just kind of skipped that part. I'm like, don't worry about it. After,
As soon as Mothra dies, you're like, the end.
yeah, exactly. I'm like, oh, like that should have been the ending. That and then the larva coming out of the egg. Roll credits. That's it. You don't need anything else after that.
Gojira 851 in the chat says Godzilla was leaving anyway, and the silk felt nice, and Godzilla just owned it.
Yeah, it's like,
It was nice and warm.
Godzilla,
There you go, Matt.
Mostly
There you go,
Goji,
Matt.
you own that look.
yeah. He needed his blanket. He's like, all right, it's nap time
Yeah.
now. Here we go.
Time for some underwater snuggles.
I'll get my thoughts real quick, and then we have like one little small question, then that'll be it, ladies and gentlemen. I'll defend this ending the same way I feel about this ending today, the same way I felt a long time ago when I first saw it. I have no problem with it. Because technically, if you really think about it, even though the monsters may be different in size, but the principle still applies. I'm like this. If you don't like the ending of this film, then you really shouldn't like the ending to Ghidra 3 of the monster. Because pretty much the same thing pretty much happens to that villain. Yes, I know the monsters are different, but no. But seriously, that is what really happens. Ghidra is not defeated until Mothra spins the web around his heads or whatever. Of course, Rodan and Godzilla beat him down, but still, the fight isn't over until Ghidra is incapacitated. Kind of like Godzilla here in this film. And in this film, yes, I know the whole larva baby thing, whatever. But a lot of people have been talking about this in the chat. It's the whole David and Goliath thing. Godzilla is the slow, big Goliath behemoth. The Mothra larvae, they're smaller, so they're less exposed, right? And they can use their environment to their advantage. Godzilla is out there in the open because he is so big. So this Mothra can move around this rock and shoot them, whatever. And the other Mothra larvae can do the exact same thing. And if Godzilla tries to spot one, he can try to take them out. But they're like constantly moving around and using the blockage of the environment and using the fact that Godzilla is exposed to their advantage. So that's why I don't really have a problem with this ending. At this point, Godzilla has pretty much done everything he could do. He's laid waste to not Tokyo, but Nagoya. He's ran through the roughshod through the countryside. He has stormed through the military's plans. He's killed the adult Mothra, and of course, with the egg being a pivotal point in this film, or at least a major plot point in this movie. We had to see the payoff. We had to see, it hatch and it, whatever. Even though I wasn't expecting, like I mentioned earlier, with the adult Mothra dying, I thought if Mothra was going to win, it was going to be the adult version. So the fact they kind of did that little twist, and yes, I know it's something that Godzilla fans just can't get behind. Between this one and King Kong versus Godzilla, I don't get it. Like, why is it that y'all just can't seem to accept the fact that Godzilla, he's the king of the monsters, but he's not indestructible. Like he has to lose at least once every now and then.
They gave Kong electric powers.
Well,
That's it. That's it.
I know how Leslie is about.
I can't accept that.
So I'm not going to say that. But let me just say this: if two Mothra larvas defeated King Ghidorah with just silking them up and everything like that, I think we would all be sitting here being like, "Okay, I can believe pretty much I can believe a three-headed dragon. I can't believe two larvas silk them up and beat them." I mean, it's I don't know. It works in a lot of ways, and I do agree with you, Leslie, about the David and Goliath beat. I think that actually is a really great idea. I just wish I think Kyle probably had the best idea. If you were going to still continue with that story, you have the military, so he's getting attacked on all sides, and everything's going on because now it's the humans rising up to try to stop him. The Mothra's trying to take revenge, and boom, it all comes together, perfectly.
I agree, but like I said, it's those reasons are the main reasons why I have no issue with the ending. And when people try to come at me and poke fun of it, I'm like, okay, it's fine. I don't take it personally, despite what you may think, despite my commentary on Facebook. But I don't have an issue for those reasons that
I don't either.
That I mentioned. And like what David said earlier, what he alluded to, it's kind of funny when Godzilla is on his way to the island, right? And he turns around and he sees the Mothra larva. At first, he doesn't do it. He doesn't pay attention to him. He just looks at him and is like, okay, fine, whatever. Then he gets more into the island, right? And he gets past that village, and he turns around again, and he sees the Mothra larva coming ashore, and he gives him a look, talking about, why are you stalking me? Like, why calling me. He's like, you know what? I know what to deal with this.
Yep.
So I like that, but again, as I mentioned, at the end of the day, Godzilla was the villain of this film. He had to have what he had coming to him, and of course, it could have been better. I will agree with that, but at the same time, I think it was appropriate. At the end of the day, David toppled Goliath, and that's why I really don't have really much of an issue with the ending of this film, and that's why. To me, it's the best Godzilla film. It's my favorite Godzilla film. Oh, yeah. It has flaws. It has issues. No Godzilla film is perfect except for this one. Every Godzilla film has issues, but to me, this is the main reason, at least one of the main reasons why I love this film so much. Now, one last quick question, and then we're going to be out of here. Everybody in the chat and my co-host here, what is your favorite Kaiju collectible from this awesome film?
Ooh. Well, while Kyle's looking for his thing, I just want to sum up what you just said. I agree with what AJ and Kyle said about the ending. But do we really care? Because it's such an epic, beautiful suit. It's such an epic, beautiful music. It's just such a great ending scene that we really don't care that it doesn't make all that much sense and we don't love the way it ends because it looks so good and it sounds so good. So I don't care what happens. I still love it. It's awesome. Go, Kyle. I was vamping for you.
Okay, thank you, buddy. So I have several. People who are watching that don't know, I ask these guys to vamp all the time on my show while I prep.
Oh yeah,
stuff.
that's right. Yeah,
David knows what he's got. David knows his job. Okay, so
I've been trying to get my dad to do that. He doesn't do that sometimes.
Oh man,
I'm like, Dad, please talk.
My podcast co-hosts from back in the day, they just did not grok that when we did a live thing. Anyway, I've had this bad boy for a long time. He's awesome, and he's definitely one of my favorite pieces. I think I told the story that I sold him at one point, and because I had money issues, and years later I was like, I'm re-getting that guy because I love him so much. However, my favorite Mosu Goji is actually probably this Kyoto kit that I built a long time ago.
Yeah.
I love the
Beautiful.
closed mouth, and I had the X Plus 30 centimeter closed mouth version with the light up fins, but I went through a X Plus 30 centimeter purge basically, and I only collect the 25 centimeter guys pretty much over there. But this guy as a kit, like I built him, I painted him. He's probably
Gorgeous.
I love that one.
Nice.
They did a great
Beautiful
job.
paint job, man.
Thanks, man. He's kind
good.
of bluish, which is I to say one more thing about it. Stan Hyde wrote an article about kind of like choosing your colors unconventionally or choosing them based off of what you want it to look like as opposed to screen accurate or this is what it looks like realistic. And I went with this blue hue and it really stands out amongst my collection. Doesn't look like it's a blue Godzilla. It's just sort of good. I don't know. I love it.
No, it totally works. Looks great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, David, go for it.
So
What's
I'm going to show
your-
you. I'm going to show you my first Godzilla, my first 64 Godzilla, and my last 64 Godzilla. First one, the Bandai standard
Yes.
size from Forbidden Planet. AJ and I talked about this on his show. And here's the tag, which has one side's correct, one side's incorrect. But this is the very first representation of the 64 suit that I have in my collection. And then AJ will like this. This is just the head because I don't want to take the other one. This is the KOC 40 centimeter
Send it to me now.
resin Godzilla. And it is by far the best Godzilla representation that I have personally seen. They just nailed everything. And what's cool about it is it comes with two heads, comes a little base. You can actually switch the heads from the
That's so
closed
awesome.
mouth to the open mouth. I don't know if you guys can see that on there. And it has
Great.
little plastic lenses that you put over the eyes to make it look just like it did in the film. So, and AJ, what I wanted to say before, I am definitely involved. It's coming along nicely. I am working on yours as we speak.
So excited. Oh, no.
I'm
I
hoping,
always knocked off my bronze.
I'm hoping to get it out to you before Christmas at some point. So anyway, though that is my all-time favorite. It used to be what Leslie's going to say. It's the M1 rubber skin 50 centimeter kit, but this one now is sort of usurped that position because it just looks so damn good. It's great. And I just want to say one real quick thing about the film. I think that it's such a great film because, as I said before, everything comes together. Akira Ifukube, Ishiro Honda, Eiji Tsuburaya, and Tomoyuki Tanaka, the producer. All four of those were at the top of their game. The story was great. The acting was great. The actors were great. The suit is great. Everything comes together. It is definitely one of the films that I will watch over and over and over again, and I will continue to defend it, as my number one film ever. So just wanted to throw that in there before we end without me saying that. So
Also,
how about you,
Shinichi
William?
Sekizawa too. The
Yes,
screenwriter.
that's right. I forgot. I knew there was someone I forgot because everybody usually leaves Tanaka out of it. They usually just do the three, but those five people, yeah, they are responsible for the success of the films during the golden era and beyond. So hats off to them. Thank you for making my monster dreams come true by making this awesome film. So go ahead, William.
So I am going to show probably the best X Plus figure of all time, and it is obviously this guy right here. Whether you have the Rick or the regular one, this is perfection right here. Doesn't matter if it's gigantic, defo, whatever you collect. The 30 centimeter, this is probably the best figure they have ever released. It looks like they literally took a scene from the movie and shrunk it down and then sold it to me. So it's perfect. The other one last thing that I really like that I have is this. It's a map of battles.
Nice.
And
that's cool.
So, and right here you kind of see him, it's where it's supposed to take place, like everywhere they had a battle.
Dude, that is awesome.
So, they have the Mothra piece here, but this is just a cool little thing that I have in general. So
that's great.
With artwork by Shinji Nishikawa.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. And William, the X Plus 30 centimeter and the KOC 40 centimeter were both sculpted by
Ibaraki,
Akira Ibaraki. I had it on the tip of my tongue. So the reason I like the resin one better just because the details are just a bit crisper.
Yeah.
You can switch out the heads and the glass eyes. So same sculptor, definitely improved on an already outstanding piece. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
So I don't have the KOC in hand yet, so I'll keep that out of the equation. This is one of my holy grail figures that my dad and I have had in our collection forever. This is
I need that. I need
the
it.
bronze Godzilla.
Cool.
The highly sought after Bandai GMS.
I want it.
So that will probably be buried with me. And then and then to echo what William said, the 30 centimeter 64, the original one, is without a doubt one of the best X Pluses they've ever made. So between these two, I don't have a gigantic anymore, Leslie.
You don't.
But that's all right. He's getting replaced by the KOC, so it's okay.
Yes, he will. He's getting
replaced. These are my two. Leslie, what do you got?
Of course, without a shadow of a doubt, in my opinion, the best version of the Mosa Goji out there in existence, the rubber version. David has one as well. The rubber version of the M1 1964 Godzilla kit. Hopefully, with that new gigantic that they announced last week, hopefully that'll open the door for X Plus to get their hands on this kit and release it in vinyl form down the line. Hopefully,
ooh, that'd be crazy.
But this is, I have pretty much all the 64s from X Plus at 25. They're for real. Two gigantics. Thanks, AJ. The 30 centimeter favorite sculptor's line, but to me, the cream of the crop is this guy right here, and that pretty much is going to do it for this show, ladies and gentlemen. You know what? We've been talking about him all night. Godzilla, you got anything you want to say? Okay, I love you too. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for being a part of this first ever deep dive discussion dedicated to 1964's Mothra versus Godzilla, aka Godzilla versus the Thing. We hope y'all had a wonderful time. Listen to us 5 great friends talk about this awesome movie. We hope that we inspire you to go back and watch it, whether it's through the Criterion Collection or if it's on a cable service. Please track it down, whether it's the Japanese version or the American version. One of the greatest Godzilla films ever in the franchise, and especially one of the great films of the golden era of the Showa period. You can't go wrong with Mothra vs. Godzilla. Trust me when I say that. Want to give a huge thank you to Kyle, David, William, AJ, everybody in the chat for being here. Really do appreciate it. I think this was a success. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm going to start doing more of these films. So you never know, I may call upon you to be the lend your voice to participate in these discussions. Like I mentioned, I think my next one will be definitely GMK. So you will definitely see both AJ and Kyle and my beautiful wife Sandra, and I might get a couple more people, peppered in to help out with that discussion as well. And then at that point, I don't know what I may tackle then, but it's going to be at least one of the good ones. Now, if you're expecting Space Godzilla and Final Wars, I wouldn't hold my breath anytime soon. But we'll get there when we get there. Let me plug a few things before we get up out of here. I don't know if I mentioned this on I did. The great interview that Kyle did with John Ruffin is on the Kaiju Cast YouTube channel. Please check it out. It's part one because they go in so much involving John and his work. Kyle, gives them information about himself as well. A great interview, great video. Like I said, it's part one. There's still a lot more to cover. I'm sure it will come at some point. Our next episode of Collect Our Monsters is going down December
12th?
Is it 12th? December 12th. And it's going to be somewhat of a year review type of episode. Looking forward to that. Of course, William, from the Godzilla Files, what do you have coming on your channel that you want to plug right fast?
So real quick, I am actually working on a review of the King of the Monsters Defo Reel line because I collected all of them, so I'm going to kind of look at all of them again, and because I just got Mothra, so I'm going to be doing that. So that hopefully will be out next week.
Nice.
And AJ, of course, you have your show tomorrow night, right?
Yeah, tomorrow's a special show. We're doing I guess you call it like a fire sale kind of show where a lot of the stuff we're going to have is going to be starting at $1. So like finger puppets, hyper figures, bunch of Bandai stuff. So a lot of good stocking stuffers for sure.
Nice. Excellent.
And then I hope next week, I've been talking about this for a while, but it's keeps getting delayed. I have a very special announcement to make with Spiral Studios that hopefully we can make next week. So I'm really excited about that. So
cool. Looking forward.
Congratulations, AJ. As far as like myself, I'll be on Collect All Monsters in a couple weeks. But the weekend before, December 5th, I'm actually going to come back and remember the live show that I plugged last week that I was going to do, or 2 weeks ago. Was it last week? I think it was last week. And I couldn't make it due to job commitments. We're going to have that show on December 5th. So you'll see AJ back. You'll see William back. You'll see Phil the Kaiju King, Brutazilla, and Gojira 851. And we're going to have a random Godzilla discussion. And what's so cool about that is I gave each of my co-hosts a random topic that I want them to talk about. And we don't know what those topics are. It could be about anything. It could be collectible related. It could be movie related. It could be how the anime series is so daggone awesome. I don't know what they're going to talk about. But it's in their hands. I'm looking forward to it. So check out that show December 5th. Probably same bat time like we normally do with Collect All Monsters, 6 p.m. Eastern time to 8 p.m. Eastern time. And don't forget, like I said, Collect All Monsters going down the following week, December 12th, year-end review. And personal reviews are probably going to do probably the 25 centimeter Gamera Rick and the Iris Rick review. That'll probably be my next review. And
Awesome.
and that's pretty much it. And like I said, the next deep dive discussion will be towards GMK, Godzilla Mothra King, blah blah blah. You know what it is, what the title is. So thank you, Kyle. Thank you, David. Thank you, AJ. Thank you, William. Really do appreciate it. Thank you for coming through for me. Y'all been champs. Y'all been awesome. And I hope you all enjoyed this chat dedicated to my most favorite and Davis and AJ and Williams and his Home Kyle's list too. The awesome, the classic, the amazing, the spectacular, brilliant 1964's Mothra versus Godzilla, aka Godzilla versus the Thing. So I thank you so much for watching. We appreciate it. And we will see y'all again on this figure and movie review. All right. Y'all take it easy. Bye.
Happy
Good night, everybody.
Happy
It was a lot of
Thanksgiving.
fun. Happy Thanksgiving.